In this video, we are going to look at how does JavaScript executes each line of code in JavaScript engine. So on the left hand side, you'll see a piece of code. When you want to execute this piece of code, JavaScript engine takes this code, executes line by line, that is also known as thread of execution, and at last gives you the output. So here the output will be a message aria in console and the value of 5 will be 5. In this video, we'll try to understand how the JavaScript engine executes the code. So to start with, what we'll do is we'll try to understand the working of JavaScript engine for this code snippet. So here in the code snippet, you can see the code starts from line number 1 to line number 9. On the right hand side, we'll create a diagram and the process of how it works. So the first thing a JavaScript engine does, as soon as you execute a code snippet, the JavaScript engine creates a global execution context. You must be thinking, what is global execution context? So global execution context, or just to understand what is a context. So context is the environment in which you are executing the code. So here the first thing a JavaScript engine does is creating global execution context. So global execution context can only get created once for each program. So for whatever code is on the left, for that global execution context will be created only once. Global execution context contains a specific section which is used for storing data, also known as memory. So now if we look at it, this is one section, this is another section. This section is used for storing data, and this is where all the execution or any computation happens. So we'll start with line number 1. On line number 1, it says let username is equal to aria. So we know that let creates a box and stores the value aria inside that box. So the box will be created somewhere in the memory. So here we'll create a box. The name of the box is username and the value is aria. So line number 1 is done. On line number 3, what we are doing is we are saying console.log username. So here we are executing a function. So earlier we saw whenever you are running a piece of code, the first thing we do is to create a global execution context. So there are two kinds of execution context. One gets created only once throughout the program. The other one is known as function execution context that gets created whenever you are executing any function. So on line number 3, we are executing a function named console.log. So a function execution context will be created and it will be very similar to what we did with global execution context. And here we will create a two section, another one for memory, and this is the execution context of console.log. Here we are saying console.log username. So I'm looking for variable username. So whenever you're looking for variable or something, the first thing you always do is to go and look for that into your local memory. So I'll go into my local memory, I'll try to look for the variable. I will not be able to find that. So when I'll not find it, I'll go outside and look for the variable named username. And here we can see we found the variable username and the value is aria. And because of that, in our console, we'll see the message aria. As soon as the function execution is over, it deletes the execution context, and that's why I'm going to put a cross mark. Let's move on to line number 5, where we are saying function add. So we are creating a function named add. So I'll create a box similar to variable, and the name is add, and it is a function. And so for that, I've just wrote fn. It will skip line number 6 and 7 and move on to last line. That is let 5 is equal to add. Again, what you're doing is creating a new variable named 5. So I'll create a box. The name is 5 and the value. To get the value, you will have to execute the function add. And we learned a few minutes back that whenever you execute the function, it creates a function execution context. So this is a function execution context for add. It has a part also known as memory. And whenever you're executing a function, the first thing you should always execute is while calling add, we are passing 2 and 3. So those things are known as arguments. So arguments are similar to variable definition. So what we will do will create two boxes with name A and B, and the value that we have passed is 2 and 3. Here we are saying return A plus B. So when you return A plus B, I'll just say A plus B. And here I can find the value of A to be 2. Similarly, it will go inside and look for the value of B, and the value of B is 3. So now if we sum this, it returns the value 5. And we're using the return statement. And that's why this value will be returned from this function. And whatever getting returned from the function is stored inside the variable 5. So now the variable 5 stores the value 5 and the execution is over. As soon as execution is over, the execution context of add function will be deleted. Now this is the state of our memory after execution of the variable username has a value of aria, the function add is a function, and the value 5 has a value of 5. So this is the basics of how thread of execution works in JavaScript. We will explore a lot more in upcoming videos with different concepts. Once we understand this whole structure properly, we will be able to understand more complex topics in a very easy way like closure, scope, higher order function, etc.